Penn grad Charlie Javice sentenced to 7 years for defrauding JPMorgan of $175 million. So Charlie Javice, she got sentenced to 7 years for defrauding JPMorgan Chase. Javice fabricated data to sell her startup company Frank to JPMorgan for $175 million. Javice must forfeit $22.4 million and pay, wait for it, $287.5 million in restitution to JPMorgan. So, University of Pennsylvania graduate Charlie Javice was sentenced to just over 7 years in prison on Monday for lying to JPMorgan Chase & Company about the number of customers her startup had prior to the bank acquiring it for $175 million. Javice and her co-defendant, Olivier Amar, were convicted in March of conspiracy, wire fraud, bank fraud, and securities fraud following a 6-week jury trial. Javice's 85-month sentence was handed down by Judge Alvin K. Hellerstein in United States District Court for the Southern District of New York. Prosecutors had sought a 12-year sentence. Javice's attorney plans to appeal her conviction, according to reports. Federal prosecutors allege Javice, a 2013 Penn grad and native of Westchester County, New York, lied to get the nation's largest bank to acquire her now shuttered student loan assistance company, Frank. Prosecutors alleged Javice and Amar, who was the chief growth officer at Frank, fraudulently induced JPMorgan to buy Frank by paying a data scientist to manufacture accounts to make it look like the company, which helped college students apply for financial aid, had 10 times as many users as it actually did. JPMorgan paid $175 million to buy Frank in 2021 with an expectation that it would gain access to millions of users to whom it could cross-sell its banking products. According to the criminal complaint, Javice in 2017 founded Frank to simplify the process of filling out the free application for federal student aid, also known as FASVA. Investors, including Israeli venture capital firm Aleph, I don't know, and billionaire Mark Rowan of Apollo Global Management, also a Penn alum. Javice was named to the Forbes 30 Under 30 list in 2019, though she has since been relegated to the publication's 30 Under 30 Hall of Shame. In 2021, prosecutors said Javice began to pursue a sale of Frank to a larger financial institution with two major banks, one being JPMorgan, expressing interest. Prosecutors and the Security and Exchange Commission allege Javice orchestrated a scheme to deceive JPMorgan into believing that Frank had access to valuable data on 4.25 million students who used the company's service, when in reality the number was less than 300,000. Prosecutors said when JPMorgan sought to verify the number of Frank users and the amount of data collected about them, Javice fabricated the data set. According to prosecutors, then approached an outside data scientist and hired him to create a synthetic data set, which was then provided to an agreed-upon third-party vendor in an effort to confirm to JPMorgan that the data set had over 4.25 million rows. Based on the fraudulent data, JPMorgan agreed to buy Frank. As part of its deal to acquire the startup, the bank hired Javice and other Frank employees. Prosecutors said Javice received over $21 million for selling her equity stake in Frank, and per the terms of the deal, was to be paid another $20 million as a retention bonus. In addition to jail time, Javice was sentenced to 3 years of supervised release, along with forfeiture of $22.4 million and restitution of $287.5 million to JPMorgan Chase. She was also ordered to pay, I believe, $117 million in legal bills for JPMorgan Chase. So she owes them basically about $400 million for this whole ridiculous fraud. And this is a crazy case. Let me show everybody this real quick. So again, just another article here from CNBC. So startup founder Charlie Javice sentenced to 7 years in prison for defrauding JPMorgan Chase. So I just want to say, a couple of things on this, because I find this case very interesting, and I find a lot of similarities here to the case with Theranos, with Elizabeth Holmes. And I wonder. It may be too early to state this or to think this, but in more recent years, where you have had this whole kind, obviously the feminist girl power, girl boss movement, 100% girl everything, rah rah, get the pom poms out, girls are the greatest everything, kind of moment for the last 10 years. A lot of that has been positive, but I think there have also been a lot of negatives to it as well. And I think that this kind of thing is one of the negatives that you're seeing. And now, why would I say that? Well, I think there's a lot of pressure on a lot of these young women that the media, especially the media liberal, the liberal media, a lot of Democrats, they want these women to succeed so badly, and to just, I guess, I don't know, maybe to prove the point that's like, yeah, anything you could do, I could do it better, kind of thing. I guess I don't know, but they want them to succeed so badly that that these women are willing to go to lengths to literally create these totally fraudulent situations in order to be successful, to fulfill that narrative. And it's not a good thing. And it's not healthy for these girls. I mean, you saw there in the one article, like, oh, she was named to 30 of the best 30 under 30. Well, the same thing with Elizabeth Holmes with Theranos. She was heralded on all these magazines, and she was going to be the female Steve Jobs. And she was just brilliant because, hey, she dropped out of Stanford because she was just too smart for Stanford, and she just, and she created this company, and she's going to be the first female tech billionaire and all this other stuff or whatever. And I would remind people that, how short memories, Martha Stewart was actually the first female billionaire business owner. Okay. They shafted Martha. I'm disgusted by what they did to Martha Stewart. Nancy Pelosi should be in jail for the rest of her life. She did, what she does every day. They got Martha Stewart for some just absolute nonsense. So, but anyway, all right, I get sidetracked there. But my point being is that, they're pushing these young women to, basically like, they're feeling this pressure. Oh, you got to do this. You got to do. They're so desperate to hoist them up on this pedestal and say, oh, look at how great they are. They're the first female to ever do this, first female to ever do that. Instead of letting it happen naturally, instead of letting it happen organically. And I just think that that's one of the interesting kind of side effects from this. I would be curious. And again, I'm sure a lot of people would lambaste me for these comments right now. Would be like, oh, how could you say that? These are ridiculous, whatever, but you see it. I mean, you see it. I don't think I'm crazy. I don't think I'm pointing out there's something that's not there. The pressure on these young women to, create these, and then they immediately, the minute they get out there and form any kind of company or start to do anything, it's immediate with all the accolades. They haven't done anything. They haven't proven anything. And yet here's all the accolades, oh, you're a genius. You're the best. You're the greatest. How about you just wait? How about you stop? How about you stop with all the participation trophies and all the other nonsense, and stop hoisting them up? And why don't you wait until they actually do something and then give them some kudos, then put them up on the pedestal? Why don't we wait for that? So and again, you'd like to say that maybe this is the last time we see a case like this. I don't think it will be, though. I think we will continue to see more stuff like this. And then you get into this whole conversation about ethics. I could go on a rant for 2 hours about ethics, what I call Ethics Inc. One day, one of these days, I'm going to write a book about a topic that I call moral intelligence. You have what is it? You have emotional intelligence. You have just general intelligence. But there's also this thing called moral intelligence, MI. And with moral intelligence, this is where religion comes in, where you have to have a moral foundation. Ethics are built on top of a moral foundation, not without a moral foundation. So if you have no morals, you cannot have ethics without morals. So if you have no moral foundation, you have no ethics. And so, and I find it funny that wherever you go, there's ethics, right? You're in college. Oh, you get the ethics class. Oh, you go to the workplace. The workplace probably have you take an ethics class. You go back to get an MBA, you get an ethics class. You go to some kind of specialty school, you get everybody's got an ethics class. And it's funny because everybody gets these ethics classes to death, and you have these employment agreements and all these corporate policies that all say you'll act ethically and you'll be responsible, you'll do this and whatever, and people sign all this stuff all day long, and yet we seem to have people that are just totally devoid of all ethics everywhere, which is just absolutely just shocking. If I showed everybody just a third of the news articles and stuff that I go through that I, in preparing for this and show it, like, just there's so many things that I don't even go to because maybe I don't have time for it or it doesn't fit into other stories I'm trying to tell in the show here. But if I just showed you a third of what I would have, you guys would just, it would almost seem like everybody in corporate America was committing fraud all day long. Like that was their job, is to commit fraud. So again, I think, just like I said, just like with Elizabeth Holmes, with Theranos, this Charlie Javice, I think, again, another big, fraudulent situation here. I think that obviously there will be books written about this. Maybe, who knows, maybe even a mini series or something at some point. But again, I think that this is it's a phenomenon now that you're seeing in our culture. And I find it to be a very